And away we go, episode 1248 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. Washington Commanders run game coordinator / running backs coach Anthony Lynn did not get the Buffalo Bills head coaching job. The Bills on Tuesday afternoon announced having promoted offensive coordinator Joe Brady to head coach. The Bills this past Saturday evening announced having completed an interview of Lynn for their head coaching vacancy, but Lynn still is up for the Cleveland Browns head coaching job. They this past Sunday morning announced having completed an interview of Lynn for their head coaching vacancy on Saturday night. Remember, if an NFL team during this coaching cycle hires Lynn as head coach, the Commanders get 2 third-round compensatory draft picks, one in the 2026 NFL Draft and one in the 2027 NFL Draft. This per NFL rules, designed to encourage the development of minority coaches. Lynn, because he has been on the Commanders coaching staff for at least 2 seasons, would garner the team 2 third-round compensatory draft picks if he got hired as an NFL head coach, even though Lynn already has been an NFL head coach. Lynn was a Los Angeles Chargers head coach January 2017 to January 2021. It would be something if in this coaching cycle, Anthony Lynn got a head coaching job and Cliff Kingsbury did not get a head coaching job, considering that Lynn spent the last 2 seasons working under Kingsbury and considering that the Commanders reportedly didn't even interview Lynn for their offensive coordinator vacancy created by porting with Kingsbury. Hello and welcome to this Wednesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. We on Monday night had reports that the Commanders are hiring Minnesota Vikings defensive passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach Daronte Jones as defensive coordinator. Next segment, a deep dive on Jones, as we'll speak with fantasy football expert and Minnesota Vikings media personality Paul Charchian. He's going to give us great insight on Jones, including how Jones was the anticipated replacement for Brian Flores had he departed as Vikings defensive coordinator, the excellence of Vikings secondaries under Jones, the tactical strengths of Jones, how Jones maximized production from Vikings defensive backs, the truth about what has been going on with Flores, who, remember, interviewed for the Commanders defensive coordinator job, and more. Paul Charchian, Charch, next segment on Daronte Jones. And also on the show, I'll talk Washington Capitals, Washington Wizards, and college basketball. The Caps, they continue to fall. They now are just 13-5 over their last 26 games, a 5-1 loss at the Seattle Kraken late night on Tuesday night. And wait till you hear what Caps second line right wing Tom Wilson said during his post-game session with reporters early Wednesday morning. Our rebuilding and tanking Wizards, they snapped a 9-game losing streak, a 115-111 win over the Portland Trailblazers at Capital One Arena on Tuesday night. And college basketball on Tuesday night included comeback wins for number 17 Virginia and Virginia Tech. Virginia overcame a 19-point first-half deficit in a 197 double overtime win at Notre Dame. Virginia Tech overcame a 9-point first-half deficit in a 71-65 win over Georgia Tech at Castle Coliseum in Blacksburg, Virginia. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Dave off me on this past Friday show, episode 1245, noting that the NFL's Conference Championship Sunday this past Sunday featured 2 games each with a head coaching battle of Mike versus Sean. Mike Vrabel's New England Patriots won at Sean Payton's Denver Broncos 10-7 in the AFC Championship game, and Mike McDonald's Seattle Seahawks beat Sean McVay's Los Angeles Rams 31-27 in a terrific NFC Championship game. Writes Dave, hey Galdi, in your podcast for Friday, you mentioned that the final 4 teams in the NFL playoffs gave us 2 Sean versus Mike matchups. Now we have a Mike and Mike Super Bowl, LOL. Another thing I found interesting is that on the Patriots, 3 different players with the first name Christian recorded a sack on Jarrett Stidham. Keep up the great work you're doing. Thank you for the email, Dave. Mike versus Mike in the Super Bowl. Mike and Mike, like the old ESPN radio morning show. Mike and Mike in the morning. Super Bowl 60, Seattle versus New England at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California on Sunday evening, February 8th. At 6:30. As a Washington fan, I'm not exactly super pumped about this Super Bowl because it features all kinds of what-ifs. The Patriots feature a QB1 who the Commanders could have drafted in Drake May. He was taken 1 pick after a Commanders pick. The Patriots feature a CB1 who the Commanders could have drafted in Christian Gonzalez. He was taken 1 pick after a Commanders pick. And the Patriots feature a head coach in Mike Vrabel who the Commanders in their 2024 head coaching search didn't even interview. The Seahawks, they feature a head coach and Mike Macdonald, who the Commanders in their 2024 head coaching search reportedly wanted over the person who they hired as head coach, Dan Quinn. And if you really want to go back, the Seahawks feature a president of football operations and general manager in John Schneider, who is one of the best executives in the NFL and who used to work for the Redskins. He was the Skins' vice president of player personnel for the 2001 season. John Schneider was with the Skins for the Marty Schottenheimer season. Schottenheimer, for the 2001 season, was the Skins head coach and director of football operations. The Skins in the 2001 regular season went from 0-5 to 8-8. But owner Dan Snyder fired Schottenheimer in January 2002, and so Schottenheimer lasted for just one season with the Skins, and John Schneider lasted for just one season with the Skins. This season's Super Bowl, not exactly my favorite, although it should be a really good game. And look, regarding the Commanders taking Jaden Daniels over Drake May, yes, I wanted May, but also yes, what is entirely possible, if not already the case, is that both Daniels and May are great quarterbacks. This is not a zero-sum game. And when you add what two other quarterbacks from that class are doing, the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, and the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix, this already is looking like one of the great quarterback classes in recent NFL history. 6 of the first 12 picks in the 2024 NFL Draft were quarterbacks. The NFL's common draft era began in 1967. Prior to 2024, there had never been an NFL draft in which 4 of the first 8 picks were quarterbacks, or 5 of the first 10 picks were quarterbacks, or 6 of the first 12 picks were quarterbacks. But all of that happened in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. The Chicago Bears took Caleb Williams at 1. The Washington Commanders took Jaden Daniels at 2. The New England Patriots took Drake May at 3. The Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. at 8. The Minnesota Vikings took J.J. McCarthy at 10. And the Denver Broncos took Bo Nix at 12. Hey, if you are listening to this podcast via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can rate the podcast with a star rating. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. They help us out a lot. Thank you for doing them. There is a lot to like with the Washington Commanders' new defensive coordinator, Daronte Jones. Now, that of course guarantees nothing with how his tenure as the team's defensive coordinator will go, but it's not hard to figure out why the Commanders hired him off him being, based on reports, the last of the 9 candidates who the team interviewed. Jones spent 5 of the last 6 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. He was the Vikings defensive backs coach for the 2020 and 2022 seasons and was the Vikings defensive passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach for the 2023 through 2025 seasons. The Vikings, for each of his 3 regular seasons as defensive passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach, were top 11 in the NFL in total defense per DVOA, including top 3 for each of the last 2 regular seasons. So the Vikings for the 2023 regular season were number 11 in the NFL in total defense per DVOA. The Vikings for the 2024 regular season were number 2 in the NFL in total defense per DVOA. And the Vikings for the 2025 regular season were number 3 in the NFL in total defense per DVOA. Daronte Jones has coached under a number of high-level defensive coaches. He is Vikings defensive passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach for the 2023 through 2025 seasons, coached under Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores. Jones as Vikings defensive backs coach for the 2020 season, coached under then Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer. Jones as Cincinnati Bengals secondary / cornerbacks coach for the 2018 and 2019 seasons, coached under Marvin Lewis, whose final season as Bengals head coach was the 2018 season. Jones as Miami Dolphins assistant defensive backs coach for the 2016 and 2017 seasons, coached under Vance Joseph, who was the Dolphins defensive coordinator for the 2016 season. So Jones has worked under Brian Flores, Mike Zimmer, Marvin Lewis, and Vance Joseph, some terrific defensive coaches. Daronte Jones, for what it's worth, has a connection to the Commanders' QB1, Jaden Daniels. Jones was LSU's defensive coordinator / defensive backs coach for the 2021 season. Daniels was LSU's QB1 for the 2021 through 2023 seasons. And Jones, for what it's worth, is a local. He's from Capitol Heights, Maryland, went to Bishop McNamara High School in Forestville, Maryland, then went to Morgan State University in Baltimore. For more on Daronte Jones, it is a pleasure to welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast fantasy football expert and Minnesota Vikings media personality Paul Charchian. Paul is a legend in the field of fantasy football, and he knows the Vikings exceptionally well. You can follow Paul on X at Paul Charchian. He has nearly 110,000 followers on X. Heck, I've heard that Paul is Elon Musk's favorite person on X.
We hang out together. Yeah. We talk and text more than people know. Very close that way. Very close that way. I'm excited for Daronte Jones. I'm sad to lose him, which is good news for you. Sad to lose him as part of the Vikings coaching staff. You mentioned he was the last one interviewed. And the reason for that, Al, is, I believe, because they needed to figure out what was going to happen with Brian Flores first. Because if Flores left, Daronte Jones was absolutely going to be the next defensive coordinator for the Vikings. The Vikings wanted to keep the Brian Flores offense going, and now it looks like, almost certainly will be with Brian Flores. So I think they just needed to play that thing out so that Jones knew, if Jones was going to have the opportunity to be the defensive coordinator in Minnesota, I think he would have just stayed here in the environment they've gotten with all the players he already knows. And I think that's what pushed him to the back of maybe the back of the line from a timing standpoint. But ultimately, I'll be shocked if you're not delighted with Daronte Jones and what he does for your defense.
It's tricky with assistant coaches because we don't hear from them much and we don't always truly know how good or bad they are. But what can you tell us about what we do know about Daronte Jones?
Yeah, so DB coach. Then last year he started interviewing for defensive coordinator jobs. At this time last year, in preseason games, he was allowed to call plays. That's something that is pretty unique to Minnesota, where Kevin O'Connell will let his coaches who don't otherwise get to call plays because he wants to give them some of that experience that can, he believes, help their careers. So he's got a little bit of experience that way. Daronte Jones hasn't been in Minnesota all that long, 3 years and one prior stop. But, look at the guys he's worked with. Vance Joseph, Mike Zimmer, Marvin Lewis, Brian Flores. That's some defensive pedigree right there. And what those guys have in common is just attacking defense, Al. These are guys that all love two key things. And there's a lot of things you could talk about. And I'm sorry for rambling on about Daronte Jones here. It's pre-snap looks that leave quarterbacks confounded about what's coming. And then it's the aggressiveness. The high blitz rates. Flores has led the league in blitzing since he's been in Minnesota. You're going to see a lot of efforts to and a lot of risk taking. Sometimes it doesn't work. You're going to see a lot of efforts to get at quarterbacks, create turnovers. Vikings led the NFL in turnovers 2 years ago. We're not as good at that last year. But, and I don't know if you know this, again, sorry for rambling on so much. This stat is so absurd, Al, it sounds like I'm making it up. The final 8 games of the Viking season, basically half a year, they allowed 1 passing touchdown. That's insane. That's leather helmet era passing defense right there. And you are getting the passing game coordinator on defense, Daronte Jones.
Brian Flores is the number 1 person on the Vikings defensive coaching staff. Daronte Jones was number 2. Is that correct?
He was. Yep. And again, he would have been the guy that almost certainly, nobody came out and said it, but it was known Daronte Jones was going to be the guy if Flores left.
When it comes to the quality of the defensive backs who Daronte Jones coached with the Vikings, what's more accurate, that he got a lot out of a little or that he maximized great talent?
Well, that's a great question. And, the Vikings were very successful, so it's reasonable to ask, well, okay, with whom, and is that replicatable with, the Washington roster, which is not as good, but there were a handful of key players that were impact players. Jonathan Grenard's one of the best rushers in the league, and, having him was huge. Andrew Van Ginkel, just disruptive at the line of scrimmage. but it fell off after that. Isaiah Rodgers at cornerback is good. Harrison Smith at the very end of his career, still very good. And Harrison Smith, by the way, can contemplate retiring each of the last 2 years, and he kept coming back and he kept being good. And I believe he came back because of Brian Flores and Daronte Jones. Those are the two coaches that he worked with the most. And he wouldn't have come back if he didn't love it. So the fact that he came back was great. But really, it's an inconsistent defense. It's an older defense. And, outside of a few really key star players, one of the things Flores does really well is he masks the deficiencies on his defense by putting his star players in a spot to be so disruptive that defenses have to worry about them.
We know that Brian Flores is a bit intense.
Yeah.
What about the personality of Daronte Jones?
Not as much. We don't know as much because we don't get to see him practicing as much as you get to see Brian Flores, who's out implementing his system. But what we know about Jones is he's a big X's and O's guys. We'll see stuff produced through the team where they're breaking down defenses, and he's drawing X's and O's up on the chart and explaining exactly what they were trying to do. Known also as a big motivator, somebody who really can talk to his players, interact with his players, help explain what they're trying to do. And so those are the things that I think you're going to get with him. I can't speak to his temperament. I don't know. I don't know that he's got the Brian Flores temperament, but he seems, the stuff that we get to see on the outside, he just seems more of a strategic, calculating thinker than what we see with Brian Flores, which is so much emotion. But maybe that comes out. So I can't give you a complete answer on Daronte Jones that way.
That Daronte Jones is a first-time NFL defensive coordinator for the Commanders. How much does that matter?
I think the bigger challenge will be the play calling. It's hard. And, look at how many times we've seen high-profile coordinators around the league trying to call plays for the first time and fail. You can look at the Eagles this year. You can look at John Morton with the Lions this year, had to get relieved of his play calling duties halfway through the season. I think that'll be the challenge here for Jones is just, he'll be learning on the job and play calling. And that's a part that you don't know till you get into the heat of fire and you've got 3 seconds to call the next defense. It's hard. So that'll be part of the learning curve for Daronte Jones for sure.
With Brian Flores, so a great run as Vikings defensive coordinator over the last 3 seasons. His contract expired. The Commanders on January 14th reportedly interviewed Flores for their defensive coordinator vacancy. The Vikings on January 21st announced having signed Flores to a contract extension, but the reporting is that he still could leave for a head coaching job. Also, Mike Pettin, who just retired off having been an assistant head coach for the Vikings for the last 4 seasons, he in an installment of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show on YouTube on January 21st had quite the no comment on Flores. Here was that.
Kind of why I wanted Brian Flores to be the next coach of the Browns, but obviously either he's not interested or they're not interested. I don't know. I know he has that reputation. You worked with him. He was tough on the players in Miami, and I think he's been vindicated. What's your thoughts on Coach Flores?
Probably not many that I would prefer to share. I mean, we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and that's why I spent this past year on offense. I was there in 24 and 25, or 23 and 24 on defense. So, I'll take the high road on that one.
Yeah, how about that? I'll leave this open-ended. What do you make of what has been going on with Brian Flores?
Well, so Flores got a new 1-year deal with Minnesota, and I think it became pretty clear that he was not going to get one of the head coaching jobs. I believe Flores must realize now he needs to spend this year mending fences, building bridges, and gaining a reputation that isn't what it is now, which is a love-hate reputation. Some players love him, some hate him, some coaches love him, some hate him, and he needs to spend this year building bridges and finding people that are going to bang the drum for Brian Flores as a person. And I think that's what's hurt him a lot. the coaching circles it's very, very gossipy and it's very tight. And if you make some enemies in the coaching circles, it gets around the league so fast. And that's what Brian Flores is battling right now. And so he's got a year under this deal to improve his reputation and put himself in a better position to be a potential head coach. And in the meantime, the Vikings get to keep one of the great defensive coordinators. So it worked out well for my favorite team.
Much more with Paul Charchian in moments, but if you are a Commanders fan, check out bgobsession.com, an outstanding site for Commanders discussion. The Sons of Washington forum on bgobsession.com is tremendous. A lot of smart and funny conversation. BG Obsession, or BGO, has been going strong since 2009. Great contests, game day chats, and camaraderie. No politics, just football. Both old school and new school fans are welcome. Visit and join BGO at bgobsession.com. bgobsession.com, home to your burgundy and gold obsession. We're talking Daronte Jones with fantasy football expert and Minnesota Vikings media personality Paul Charchian. I was going to say, to whatever extent Brian Flores has been difficult to deal with, the Vikings have extended him. So they're willing to put up with him because he is such a good defensive coordinator.
Al, had he taken the defensive coordinator job in Washington, Brian Flores, and left here, it would have been almost impossible for ownership in the front office to put a positive spin on that. I mean, Flores, we love what Flores has done with the defense. We don't care that he's hard to work with or, whatever. We don't, care how he treats coaches or players. Doesn't matter to us. All we know is the Vikings defense has been awesome with Brian Flores, and we want to keep him. Had he left for a lateral move, it would have been really tough to mollify the fan base here. And the way they would have done it was with Daronte Jones, to bring it back to him. I think they would have said Daronte Jones is going to go, keep the Brian Flores system had he left. So, yeah, Brian Flores is an enigmatic personality, man. The lawsuit against the Dolphins that is still unresolved, and players and coaches that normally are very hesitant to say anything bad are pretty willing to come out with Brian Flores and just be honest. It's tough. Flores needs to do needs a 1-year redemption tour.
I wonder if the Brian Flores-Daronte Jones dynamic was a bad cop, good cop dynamic, with Jones being the good cop.
And it may have been, and again, that's the kind of stuff that we don't know, that you have to, I think you really have to be inside the team to know that stuff. And nobody's talking about that quite yet, but hopefully that's the case.
I do want to ask you about Sam Darnold. The Vikings quarterback decisions of the 2025 offseason, allowing Sam Darnold to leave via unrestricted free agency off his very good 2024 season, allowing Daniel Jones to leave via unrestricted free agency, and going with J.J. McCarthy as a QB1 off trading up to take him with the number 10 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft out of the University of Michigan. Darnold now is quarterbacked the Seattle Seahawks to the Super Bowl. Your reaction to that is what?
I just did 3 hours of radio, and this was topic A. Is the Vikings screwed up? Period. You can't put qualifiers on it. The Vikings had the opportunity to re-sign Darnold coming off a 14-win season, and they decided the final 2 games of last year, where the Vikings in the final regular season game had the opportunity to become the number 1 seed if they could beat the Lions, and they got roasted. Then they went in as the 6th seed, played the Rams, got roasted. And Sam looked bad in those games, but he also, in these 2 games, was forced the pressures on him, 78 pressures in 2 games, in those 2 games against Sam Darnold, including a 9-sack game, and people blamed Darnold. They didn't blame the offensive line around here and just said they were convinced Darnold could not win the big game because he did not win that Week 18, did not win in the playoffs. And obviously, as it's turned out, Sam Darnold just dueled Matthew Stafford in one of the greatest passing playoff games in memory. Those 2 guys threw for over 700 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Sam was fantastic, and so was Stafford. I didn't say he outdueled Stafford. He just dueled with Stafford, a Hall of Famer. Held his own with Stafford going off. Losing Sam Darnold is a crushing blow for Vikings fans. And now, you got to live with the consequences of it. And you're, continue to be stuck with J.J. McCarthy.
Sam Darnold has become emblematic of how a first-round quarterback can go from bust to really good. That with some of these quarterbacks, it just takes time and the right situation. And beyond him, we can think that we know about quarterback classes, but we don't know. That Darnold is the first quarterback from a 2018 NFL draft class that includes Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson to make a Super Bowl is crazy. And I think about that as it relates to the 2024 NFL draft quarterback class. And the Commanders, with their number 2 overall pick in that draft, taking Jaden Daniels over Drake May, who, of course, was taken by the New England Patriots at 3. And now the Pats have made the Super Bowl. And that has sparked all kinds of conversation here locally. But to me, a lesson in all of this is hold off on passing final judgments on quarterback classes. The ultimate verdicts on these quarterback classes can take a long time to develop.
Yeah, it's, yes and no. So, Al, I think this is a really nuanced conversation. For Washington and Commanders fans, there's might be a little bit of buyer's remorse, but you have a quarterback who can deliver greatness because you're in the NFC Championship game a year ago and you've seen his passing. So you're in a good spot with Jaden. For the Vikings fans, we're really looking at a quarterback who had a mostly terrible year and with only a handful of good throws to make you feel like you can go forward. I think more often than not, teams don't turn the page fast enough on bad quarterbacks. They're so invested in the draft equity that they won't. They're reticent to turn the page, and they need to. I mean, look at what has happened. I'll give you some examples. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You draft Kenny freaking Pickett. Can you turn the page? Nope. Got to run that thing out for 2 years. You're Will Levis, picked 33 in the draft. Will Levis ended the tenure of Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. They turned the page on Mike Vrabel before they would on Will Levis, who was their starter the next year. Zach Wilson, given 3 years to start with the Jets. Anthony Richardson. These guys, they get so many opportunities and they end up costing head coaches' jobs, general managers' jobs, because teams won't turn the page even when it's abundantly clear that their young quarterback doesn't have it. My worry is the Vikings are in exactly that spot. 49ers turned the page on Trey Lance. It was a brilliant move. Arizona turned the page on Josh Rosen. Good move.
You mentioned J.J. McCarthy having had a mostly terrible season. He was not mostly terrible against our team. He and the Commanders' 31-0 loss at the Vikings this past December 7th looked like 1998 Randall Cunningham in terms of Vikings quarterbacks, and that is why Daronte Jones is the Commanders' defensive coordinator.
Yeah, maybe so. That was his only 3-touchdown game. I think it might have been his only game without an interception as well, was against your team. The defense needs, so as Daronte Jones looks at your defense, Von Miller and Bobby Wagner are not part of the long-term here, right? So who are the young superstars that you build around on defense?
The team doesn't have any, and that's a big part of the problem. The general manager, Adam Peters, has to have a good offseason, especially in acquiring defensive players. The Commanders so need an infusion of youth and talent on defense.
Yeah, your draft has got to be mostly that side of the ball for sure.
Fantasy football expert and Minnesota Vikings media personality Paul Charchian. Charch, thanks. All the best.
Yeah, absolutely, Al. Let's talk again soon.
All right, the Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. It will fight for you and win for you. Lead attorney Chris Nace, he is a big Commanders fan and a big supporter of this podcast, and his firm wins trials. Just recently, an $8 million jury verdict in Baltimore City Circuit Court. If you have a case, contact the Nace Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. The Nace Law Group is tremendous. It is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C., and West Virginia. We always hope that everything is going well for you, but if you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the Nace Law Group and schedule a no-obligation appointment. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. Another bad loss for the Washington Capitals, a 5-1 loss at the Seattle Kraken late night on Tuesday night. The Caps in the NHL's 2025-2026 regular season fell to 25-22-7, including 8-13-5 over their last 26 games, and just 1-3-1 on this current 6-game road trip, which is the Caps' longest road trip of this regular season. The Caps, for this loss at the Kraken late night on Tuesday night, were without two key defensemen in Rasmus Sandin and Matt Roy. Each did not play due to a lower body injury. Also, the Caps remain without center Pierre-Luc Dubois. He has been out since getting injured in the Caps' 3-1 loss to the New York Islanders at Capital One Arena on October 31st. He, on November 7th, underwent surgery to address injuries to his abdominal and adductor muscles, was expected to miss 3 to 4 months. But still, these absences do not excuse what happened in this loss at the Kraken late night on Tuesday night. The Caps got ripped in the puck possession battle. They had just 20 shots on goal to the Kraken's 32, and Pranato Statrick had just 36 5-on-5 shot attempts to the Kraken's 53, including 11 5-on-5 high-danger shot attempts to the Kraken's 13. The Caps starting goaltender Logan Thompson struggled. He stopped just 27 of the 32 shots on goal that he faced. The Caps went just 3 for 4 on the penalty kill. The Caps right now are a bad team, and they are falling in the standings. The Caps for this regular season have 57 points, tied with the Philadelphia Flyers for 4th in the 8-team Metropolitan Division, but the Caps have played 3 more games than the Flyers have played. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that the Caps had the best record in the Eastern Conference. Take a listen to this from Caps second-line right wing Tom Wilson during his post-game session with reporters early Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I think this is a kick in the teeth. So, we got 1 game left on this trip, and it's the biggest game of the year. So, if we're not desperate after this one, then I don't know what to say. I think our group understands what's going on here, and this is a big wake up call coming in here and getting our asses handed to us. So, we got to be better, and we will be better.
Yeah, so strong words from Tom Wilson, but he's not wrong, and what he said came up during Caps head coach Spencer Carberry's post-game session with reporters early Wednesday morning as we had this exchange between Caps insider Bailey Johnson of the Washington Post and Carberry, and then you'll hear a back and forth between Caps insider Mike Vogel of WashingtonCaps.com and Carberry.
Tom just said that this should be a wake-up call for the group. Do you feel like that wake-up call maybe should have come already at this point?
Yeah, I understand what he's getting at, like a loss like tonight with where we're at in the season and where things stand. But I feel like our guys have had a bunch of wake-up calls over the last couple of weeks at meetings and understand the significance of where we're at. And so when you get outplayed like we did, it's not a good feeling what went on tonight.
It seemed like in the first you at least had some looks and some chances, and they seemed to just completely dry up there in the middle period.
Mm-hmm.
What was lacking offensively and just connectivity-wise?
Yeah, I would say this, so Vogues, we do get 3 transition chances. The 2-on-1, Gruby makes a save on Stromer, the one back door that goes back through, no doubt. Those are quality looks, but if you're evaluating who's carrying the play, who has the puck, what end is the puck in, it's not close. So that's where the transition chances are nice and we don't capitalize, but we have to be able to go toe-to-toe with a team and control some play and have the puck and be in their end and register a few shots. And that's, that wasn't tonight.
This is almost 2 months now between being able to string together.
Yeah.
Do you sense that?
Look, that's your guys' job to evaluate where our team's at and what it looks like on a night to night. I don't even bother with that. What I bother with is how I'm going to help our group get better and perform at their absolute best, and our individual players, and develop those guys as best I possibly can every single day. So whether we're good enough to whatever you want to evaluate. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about how we're going to win the next game, or how I can help our group put them in the best position possible to win the next game, and how can they improve tomorrow and the next day and the following day to be the best possible NHL players they can be.
Yeah, things are not going well for our Caps right now. They end this loss at the Kraken late night on Tuesday night. Did go 1 for 5 on the power play, and the goal came from the grade 8.
Chychrun across the blue line here. Then right side in front, they score, and it's Alex Ovechkin on a feed from Ryan Leonard. Bottom of the far circle, across the top of the crease, and Ovechkin has gotten Washington on the board. Here in the third period, it's 3-1.
John Walton on the Washington Capitals radio network. Caps top line left wing Alex Ovechkin. He scored a power play goal at 2:30 into the third period for his 22nd goal in this regular season and his NHL record 919th career regular season goal. Also, he had a game-high tying 4 shots on goal. The Caps' lone healthy scratch for this game was winger Sonny Milano. Next up for the Caps at the Detroit Red Wings Thursday night at 7:30. Well, our rebuilding and tanking Washington Wizards on Tuesday night won for the first time in 3 weeks.
Blazers will inbound on the right sideline, working right to left in the front court. Alex Sarr will cover the inbound. Tamani Kamara on the inbound. Kamara into Sharp, right corner over George for 3 out the side of the backboard. George the rebound. 9-game losing streak. Get out of here. Get out of here. The Wizards back in the win column. A 115-111 win over the Portland Trailblazers.
Dave Johnson and Glenn Consor on the Washington Wizards radio network. Yes, the Wizards won a 115-111 win over the Portland Trailblazers at Capital One Arena on Tuesday night to snap a 9-game losing streak. This was the Wizards' first win since January 6th. They end the NBA's 2025-2026 regular season now are 11-34, second worst record in the NBA. The Wizards in this win over the Blazers on Tuesday night overcame a 6-point fourth quarter deficit. They end the fourth quarter trailed by 6 points at 92-86, but then won the rest of the game at 29-19. Now, the Blazers were without a bunch of players due to injury, but the Wizards remain without multiple players. Trae Young did not play for a 9th time in 9 games since being acquired by the Wizards via trade on January 9th. He's now playing due to a right knee sprain and a right quadriceps contusion. Marvin Bagley III was not available for a 3rd consecutive game. He, for this game, was not available due to a thoracic strain. He, for the first game, was not available due to illness. Tristan Vukcevic was not available for a 6th consecutive game. He was listed as dealing with a left hamstring strain. He, for the first 2 games, was listed as being out due to left knee soreness. And Cam Whitmore is done for the season. The Wizards on January 15th announced that he had started the recovery process for a diagnosed venous condition and would miss the remainder of the season. However, back for the Wizards were Bilal Coulibaly and Chris Middleton. Bilal Coulibaly, he returned from a 5-game absence caused by a lower back strain. He in 27 minutes, 36 seconds as a starter, had just 5 points, but also 6 assists versus no turnovers, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and a game-best tying plus-minus rating of plus 19. He went 1 for 1 on threes, 0 for 1 on twos, and 2 for 2 on free throws. Very good to have him back. His defense, again, was key. 5 key young players for the Wizards: Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington, and Trey Johnson combined for 82 of the Wizards' 115 points. That right there is your nucleus of key young Wizards players. Coulibaly, Sarr, George, Carrington, and Johnson, all 5 playing on Tuesday night, and those 5 guys combined for 82 of the Wizards' 115 points. So the Wizards' leading scorer was Alex Sarr, who had a tremendous game.
Blazers, Middleton, run by Shaden Sharp, left elbow, spins, left block, floats it up, bank, no foul, slam, Alex Sarr, he's got a double-double, 29 points, 10 rebounds, Wizards by 1, 100-99.
And 5 blocks, he's been dominant.
Yes, he was. Alex Sarr, in 36 minutes, 7 seconds as a starter, had 29 points, 12 rebounds, including 6 offensive boards, 6 blocks, 2 steals, and 3 assists versus 2 turnovers. Now, he did go just 3 for 9 on threes and just 8 for 20 on twos, but he also went 4 for 5 on free throws, and he became the first Bullets/Wizards player to have at least 25 points, at least 10 rebounds, and at least 5 blocks in a regular season game since JaVale McGee on March 27th, 2011. Alex Sarr continues to be so much better than he was during his rookie season last season. During the postgame press conference of Wizards head coach Brian Keefe on Tuesday night, had this exchange between Wizards insider Josh Robbins of The Athletic and Keefe.
How much better is Alex's motor now compared to what it was when he in training camp of his rookie year?
I think it's just more consistent. I always thought he had a good motor, but you got to learn the NBA and going through the fire, like I've mentioned before. He's just learning to do it consistently now. And he's kind of experienced a lot of things, and he's still got some more experiences to come, like they all do because they're young guys. But it's just his consistency has been growing, and that's the thing that's been very impressive this year.
Yeah, Alex Sarr, big-time bright spot for the Wizards this season. Another bright spot, Keyshawn George. He in 36-36 as a starter had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists versus 1 turnover, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and a game-best tying plus-minus rating of plus 19. He went 4 for 10 on threes and 5 for 6 on free throws. Did go just 1 for 6 on twos. And another bright spot, Trey Johnson. He in 32-02 as a starter had 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists versus no turnovers. He went 3 for 5 on threes, 4 for 8 on twos, and 1 for 1 on free throws. And I mentioned Chris Middleton. He returned from a 1-game absence caused by left foot soreness, and he was good. 26-46 as a starter, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists versus 1 turnover and 3 steals. He went 1 for 2 on threes, 6 for 12 on twos, and 4 for 4 on free throws. So the Wizards' defense was pretty good. They allowed the Blazers to go 14 for 38 on threes, but held the Blazers to just 28 for 71 on twos and totaled 16 steals and generating 20 Blazers turnovers. Also, the Blazers went just 13 for 23 on free throws. The Wizards' offense was mixed. They went 17 for 39 on threes and 18 for 21 on free throws and had 27 assists. You like all of that, but the Wizards also went just 23 for 59 on twos and committed 14 turnovers. And how about this? The Wizards won despite getting out-rebounded 69-46, including having 14 offensive rebounds to the Blazers' 29, and thus just 14 second-chance points to the Blazers' 31. But the Wizards did win. Next up for the Wizards, home to the Milwaukee Bucks, Thursday night at 7. And let's talk college basketball. Come from behind wins for Virginia and Virginia Tech on Tuesday night. Wild win for number 17 Virginia. It in the 2025-2026 regular season improved to 17-3 overall, including 6-2 in the ACC, with a 197 double overtime win at Notre Dame on Tuesday night. This off UVA's 85-80 loss to then number 22 North Carolina at John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville, Virginia this past Saturday afternoon. UVA in this double overtime win at Notre Dame on Tuesday night overcame a 19-point first half deficit. Good offense for the Cavaliers. They went 10 for 29 on threes, 21 for 36 on twos, and 28 for 35 on free throws, and had 21 assists versus 11 turnovers. So UVA won despite its defense not being good for a second consecutive game. The Wahoos allowed Notre Dame to go 11 for 27 on threes and 18 for 34 on twos and generate 34 free throw attempts, of which Notre Dame made 28. Also, the Hoos got worked by 6'5" Cole Serta. He, in 40 minutes, 29 seconds as a starter, had 34 points and 2 rebounds. He went 5 for 13 on threes, 5 for 6 on twos, and 9 for 11 on free throws. But 70 of UVA's 100 points came from just 3 guys, Testa Ritter, Sam Lewis, and Chance Mallory. UVA's leading scorer was 6'9" Belgian true freshman Testa Ritter. He had 33 .335 as a starter, had 32 points, 8 rebounds, including 4 offensive boards and 3 assists. He went 9 for 15 on twos and 14 for 15 on free throws. Did go 0 for 5 on threes and did commit 4 turnovers, but whereas Notre Dame had a guy in Cole Serta who scored 34 points, UVA had a guy in Testa Ritter who pumped in 32 points. 6'7" Toledo transfer Sam Lewis, he in 43.09 as a starter, had 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists versus 1 turnover. He went 5 for 8 on threes, just 2 for 5 on twos, and 2 for 2 on free throws. And 5'10" true freshman Chance Mallory, 36-51 off the bench, 17 points, 3 assists versus 1 turnover, 2 rebounds, and a game best plus-minus rating of +11. He went 3 for 6 on threes and 2 for 3 on twos. Did go just 4 for 8 on free throws. But what a win for UVA. Here was head coach Ryan Odom during the opening statement of his postgame press conference late night on Tuesday night.
They played an awesome game. I mean, they got off to a great start. They were really comfortable, and we were uncomfortable. Get down 19 in the first half, and we were reeling a little bit, and that's probably an understatement, of course. But in the timeouts, our guys came in and they were, communicating with one another in a positive way. Certainly, we did not intend to get down, as much as we were down, but we were in that moment, and Notre Dame was putting a ton of pressure on us, and our guys had to answer. And fortunately, it began to turn a little bit. We had to play some lineups really for the majority of the game that we haven't played all year. And, it gave us the best chance, to be able to whittle the lead down a little bit going into halftime. And then we just tried to continue to grind, over the course of the second half. And the defense improved a little bit. We were able to force some misses. The press, we scored better. We got into the press, which, was able to really help us extend the game. And so many great plays out there. It's hard to recount all of them on both sides, the shots that were made and the big plays that these young people were making. Was made for a great college basketball game. It's one of those that you hate anybody ends up losing. But we have so much respect for Notre Dame and Coach and the way that they run their program.
All right, next up for Virginia at Boston College, Saturday afternoon at 1:30. Virginia Tech, in this regular season, improved to 16-6 overall, including 5-4 in the ACC, with a 71-65 win over Georgia Tech at Castle Coliseum in Blacksburg, Virginia on Tuesday night. The Hokies overcame a 9-point first-half deficit, and what won this game for them was their defense. So they held Georgia Tech to just 3 for 17 on threes and a respectable 22 for 40 on twos, and generated 14 Georgia Tech turnovers. And it's a good thing that the Hokies defense was good because their offense was not good. The Hokies went just 8 for 29 on threes, just 14 for 36 on twos, and just 19 for 26 on free throws. Tech's leading scorer was 5'11" Ben Hammond. He in 36-57 as a starter had 20 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists versus no turnovers. He went 3 for 5 on threes, just 3 for 7 on twos, and 5 for 5 on free throws. Tech did remain without 6'5" Tyler Johnson. He did not play for a 9th consecutive game due to a left ankle injury. Next up for Virginia Tech, a big game home to number 4 Duke Saturday at noon. Meantime, in the A-10, a heartbreaking loss for George Washington. The Colonials in this regular season fell to 13-8 overall, including 4-4 in the A-10, with a 79-76 loss at number 21 St. Louis on Tuesday night. GW blew a 15-point first-half lead and a 13-point second-half lead. Gave up a tie-breaking 3 by 6'10" Robbie Avila with 3 seconds left in the second half. Next up for George Washington, home to Fordham, Saturday afternoon at 2. But also in the A-10, another win for VCU. The Rams in this regular season improved to 15-6 overall, including 6-2 in the A-10, with a 77-69 win over Richmond at the Stuart C. Siegel Center in Richmond, Virginia on Tuesday night. VCU never trailed, had at least 5 players each with at least 10 points for the 9th time in 21 games in this regular season. Next up for VCU, home to Loyola Chicago, Friday night at 9. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Thursday show, episode 1249. We'll provide you with more on the Washington Commanders. Also on Thursday's show, I'll talk college basketball. Georgetown is home to DePaul Wednesday night at 8:30, and George Mason is home to Davidson Wednesday night at 7. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.
What's your thoughts on Coach Flores?
Probably not many that I would prefer to share.